We're now joined by Iryna Zhyrun from Moscow. She's a PhD candidate in political science at the Higher School of Economics at the National Research University. Iryna, thank you so much for your time. Putin, when he made this move, was in part trying to stop NATO's expansion. But has he just cemented NATO's resolve against Moscow?
Good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, right now we can see that the countries of NATO are more united. So I think in part, the effect is the opposite, because now obviously Russia is a target for NATO, but it has been a target for all these years, but it was not that obvious. Yeah, right now there is a really solid proof that Russia presents a threat, but I think there are different aims among those that you mentioned that Russia has, and it will achieve some of those.
What do you think are some of the aims it will achieve, and what do you think is looking unlikely now?
Well, the Ukraine is not a part of NATO, of course, but Ukraine has been involved in all NATO operations, and it has built the infrastructure for NATO, especially the last 8 years. So there was a NATO base of, I think, the US, that was a clandestine NATO base that it has now been destroyed. And there were agreements with the UK government to build more naval bases, and this is already official information that you can find everywhere. So I think at least Russia has stopped the building of the infrastructure in Ukraine, at least.
What about Putin's standing on the world stage? I suppose he's looking increasingly isolated. How do Western nations proceed now to try and de-escalate this situation?
Yes, Putin looks like he is very isolated from the West, but he is not isolated from the rest of the countries. So we see the context with other post-Soviet countries. We see that they had talks in the recent months. There has been a lot of official meetings in Moscow, and of course Syria, Iran. I think these countries are united with Russia, so Russia is not completely isolated. Can you please repeat the second question?
I'd like to ask, who do you think then can play a mediatory role, perhaps, in trying to de-escalate or work towards a ceasefire in this increasingly tense-looking situation?
Well, we see that every day there are new, new countries that express their desire to be the mediator, among them Turkey and Hungary, I think Poland. But there is another opinion that probably the country mediator should be actually completely neutral, so maybe Switzerland. So because Minsk also offered its support, but all of these countries are affected by this conflict and they are kind of involved. So it's better to find someone who is may not be that interested in the outcomes. So I think that would be the better ground for the conversation.
It will be interesting to see how that conversation proceeds. Thank you so much for your analysis live out of Moscow for us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.